Loading now.
Being live streamed. All right.
Loading now.
Being live streamed.
All right. So welcome to the Baseline Show, everyone. Thank you for joining. It is Wednesday, April 12th. We do have a guest lined up. Hyper Oracle should be joining us, but there may have been a meeting conflict. So I am waiting to see if they'll be able to hop on. So for now, we'll just carry on with some discussions like usual per our office hours. And I will keep the group updated when I get a response shortly. But in the meantime, I was learning about something cool right before we went live called Crypto GPT. Can someone tell me what in the world that is?
Yeah, Keith, go ahead. Come on. You got that one.
Yeah, Keith, you got this.
Actually, I have no idea. I really have no idea.
ZK. What is it? Is it zero knowledge layer 2? ZK layer 2,
where you can monetize your AI data, apparently.
Okay, and they have Pancake Swap running on it, right?
I also do not know.
And they have 2 million active users at launch.
I'm just reading.
It's one of the largest blockchains.
It's one of the largest blockchains. So it's a full scam. So this is like scam alert. This is a classical blockchain meme coin bullshit bingo kind of thing. But it's fun to make
as a scam, but then things actually start to become legit halfway through. Isn't that
halfway through?
Normal path?
No, I think that's like being in the mob, and then it's like starting off with running drugs and then migrating to pizza. I think that doesn't work. You're still gonna get.
How else are you gonna get the money to start a pizza business?
Yeah. I mean,
that's a good point. It's like
you sound like you read it in a book, Andreas. Come on.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's a so the big problem. So there's actually a general problem with coins that have a cap supply because the early adopters gain all the value and the later adopters are have a problem.
Yeah.
Always, right? So that is actually a long-term adoption problem. So generally speaking, if you think about like DAOs and decentralized autonomous organizations, engagement can only be kept if it's properly incentivized, right? And if you're dominated by a couple of whales, you're actually incentivized to launch more meme coins in order to make up for the fact that you didn't get in on the first meme coins. So because it works, right? It's like the Cosa Nostra started over in Italy, but profitably replicated itself in the US, right? It's like, hey, business model work. Let's do it, right? But from a pure tokenomics point of view, if your primary means of exchange is not sort of like inflationary, or it loses value, then unless you stay engaged, there is no way that you're not automatically incentivizing bad behavior. Either you're doing centralization of value, or you're right. So you need to have some form of inflation built into your coin, either actual inflation or your holdings are burned like automatically as
I just get the feeling that all
percentage.
this. I just get the feeling that this project was developed during the high flying crypto NFT period, and now they're
No, it's just launched. It's just crypto GPT wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
Last until like November. So it's like only a couple of people knew about like GPT-3, right? So this is totally like scam coin.
Yeah.
It's like with the people that are named there, just like like got a LinkedIn profile like a month ago and stuff like that. So it's all the it's all the good stuff, but it just replicates the real world in the crypto space, right? Except with less guardrails, right? There's now the question is, can you build in the guardrails in a permissionless system without without sacrificing sort of like the trustless nature of the system, right?
Is that possible?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, okay. It's like, could you launch a rocket sideways? Sure. Why would you want to?
Oh, you would want to because you have it's like because the underlying reason is Metcalfe's law, right? So Metcalfe's law will say it's like if your ecosystem grows, the number of nodes, the value grows based on the value each participant holds, and at the square, right? So you're gaining that value as you're adding more and more participants into the ecosystem. But you want to be able to do that while still ensuring that you're compliant, right? With that you're still doing things by the book, right? But in a way that you can identify whether someone does or does not, and at the same time while preserving privacy. So that's doable, and that's why you can do like compliance policy enforcement on chain with zero knowledge proofs. That's so if you want to have a travel rule enforcement, right? And that's part of the requirements in the baseline protocol. If you're using baseline in the baseline standard, if you're using baseline state objects for value transfer, right? That's where there are actual compliance requirements in there where you need to like lock things up, and once you start using them, so you can't double pledge and things like that. So those are things that were they were intentionally integrated at the to ensure that it's like you have what do you call it, responsible usage.
I wonder if they want to tokenize car warranties.
Tokenized car. So yeah, warranties it's just liabilities, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's like warranties are like loyalty points. It's like it's it's like invoices. It's just tokenized liabilities. Now there's an interesting question. There's an interesting question about, on the tokenomic side, what if you tokenized a scarce public good and distributed it for free, right? And then people have the right to use it or not, and if they don't use it, they can sell it so that people that need more can buy it from the people who don't need it.
Or, hey, I can buy a whole bunch of these car warranties, and insurers do this all the time with loss portfolio transfers, where they basically sell a bunch of losses to someone else, and you can create a marketplace to where it's like, hey, I've got this car warranty that's on a 1997 Toyota, and I want to swap it for a car warranty that's on a 2018 Honda. One's going to have higher risk and therefore potential higher return if you wanted to exchange it and stuff. But that's if they wanted to go the marketplace route on it. But I've seen dumber stuff happen.
Well, if you have enough liquidity in that marketplace, you can do a swap. That's what like Uniswap's for, right? If you have enough of those warranties, right, that you package, right? So it's like, right, it's not an asset-based security, it's a liability-based security. So you're tokenizing and swapping risk, right? Which is an interesting thing, right? Because you're going to swap V3, you can provide liquidity in certain price ranges for a pair. So you indicate where, what your risk tolerance is.
Mm-hmm. That's making one big assumption that people understand liquidity and arbitrage and, cover their exposures and stuff, which recent history has showed us not everybody does that.
Well, I mean, if you actually do that and issue these type of things, you need to be, you need to have the proper FINRA licensing. You need to be a broker dealer and everything. So it's like that's where, again, compliance comes in. But you can build all of that into, for example, a coin, right? So you can convert a certificate that you are a U.S. broker dealer, right? Or that you have an alternative trading system license, right? You can turn that into a zero knowledge proof, right? And you can have that validated, right, on chain, and therefore you can then say, if you tie that zero knowledge compliance certificate or the zero knowledge proof representation of that compliance certificate and attach that to the asset, then anybody can verify that the issuer, right, is actually a registered broker dealer.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a legit thing, right? You just need to have identification of the type of compliance policies. Right. Again, you don't need to know who the issuer is, right? You just need to be able to verify that the certificate issuer is known, right? So that it was issued by the SEC, right? So that, and then things become really, really interesting, because then things open up, right? From a free exchange point of view, right? So then I can permissionlessly trade like liability swaps, right, on cars, right, on a portfolio of like car warranties, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In a way that's compliant, right? So then it becomes really, again, under zero knowledge. So multi-party coordination under zero knowledge. So it's like there are legitimate ways how you, for example, could integrate Uniswap into or integrate baseline tokenized assets into Uniswap.
Well, I mean, and looking at this stuff to where, you know, I start, you know, looking at that, you know, in a different light to say, you know, how much of the utility that's, you know, being put out in a lot of these use cases out there involving NFTs, couldn't that be also done with zero knowledge proofs? Because you can have that singularity and that permanence representing an asset, and proofs are a lot easier to create and to move and to share than NFTs. You know, just because I've seen a lot of the you know, use cases that would come out in the past year and stuff to where they want to tokenize, you know, all these different things, whether it's event tickets, you know, or something like that, and you know, all of a sudden the project kind of, you know, encounters some severe headwinds when they realize the transaction costs of minting and moving these NFTs becomes, you know, prohibitive. And it's like, okay, well, why not use zero knowledge proofs? I mean, I'm not saying you're using them, you know, as a absolute replacement for the other, but I think in a lot more environments that do not require that, you know, deep level of compliance reporting, could be able to use this, you know, and still have that element of trust and still have that, you know, representation of, you know, a digital asset without having to actually mint a full-blown token.
I mean, you need the double spend protection, right? When we're talking about digital assets.
Well,
right?
that's more than one zero knowledge proof of the same state, I guess, of the machine. And so I guess zero knowledge proofs wouldn't give you singularity. I mean, they would give you permanence.
If you have them, if you're the problem is that the proof does not come with a verifiable timestamp, right? So it's like so I can generate a proof anytime I want, right? Right. So it's like I can prove that this is true, but where is the timestamp on it that is verifiable, right? So it comes always back to the point. It's like you're making a statement. At what point in time are you making that statement, right? That is true,
proving it.
Right. So if you're if you're committing to that statement at a verifiable point in time, right? But if you are giving me a timestamp, it's meaningless.
But so you can't get I guess a universal stamp, because, you know, if I create the proof, it's going to reflect the local clock on my machine.
Yeah, but again, you can manipulate the local clock, right? It's like there's nothing that prevents that. So,
but could I manipulate it after the proof to,
of course you can,
replace? But wouldn't that original proof still saying, hey, this is what Mark did at 12:01, and then at 12:02 he did this?
Yeah, but I can't trust the proof because you can manipulate something. So the point is, you need to commit to something at a certain point in time that everybody agrees upon is that point in time.
Right. But can I alter or censor that proof downstream?
Well, you can. I mean, you can always come up with a new proof,
right?
And
updating,
backdate it, and then backdate it, right? So it's like, and then you have conflicting proofs.
It'd be obvious that I backdated it.
How?
Because because there is a difference between the original commit and the subsequent.
But where's that immutable record, right?
It's where I store that proof.
Right. So that's why if you store that proof in a system that allows for verifiable timestamping, then you're good. That's why the baseline protocol is saying you need a DCSM, right? A consensus controlled state machine, because that's the only way how you can generate these type of generalized timestamps. Right? I mean, that's a real problem in all in all distributed systems. So it's like and you know, it's like, oh, I received it at that point in time, right? The shipment.
Mhm.
Did you? Right. So it's are you committing to that at that point in time? If it's you know, and
Well,
if it turns out it's not, then you're right. So that's the whole point. That's why baseline is requiring this strict time ordering of your committed statements. That's super important.
right. I mean, and again, where you start having the time stamping and stuff, I mean, I'm starting to think of like the consensus algorithm that it's called proof of history, which uses the timestamp really as the as the shared consensus. I want to say Solana uses the proof of history for their consensus.
Yeah, there's like, yes, it's yeah, I looked at that at one point. Yeah, it's again, you need verifiable delay functions in order to do that fully and provably. So it becomes anything that is not sort of like anything where it's not clear that you've put in a lot of work, or that you're putting actual value at stake, you know, ahead of time.
Right.
It just doesn't work, right? You know, Sawtooth used proof of elapsed time, and they used because they said, okay, so I can prove in my trusted execution environment that the CPU ran for this many billion cycles before I committed it, right? So that it's proof of history is like proof of elapsed time. So, but it really, it doesn't matter what your consensus algorithm is, right? As long as you don't have, if you have a trustless system, you need economic security guarantees.
Yep.
And it really doesn't matter what that is. So it's like if you don't have anything to lose, there's nothing that prevents you from
yeah, but that if doesn't ever work. I mean, it's one of those where you're starting to see them, you know, start to really kind of question the proof of work, proof of stake type algorithms, because they're so slow. And that's why they're trying to, you know, start look at some of like the proof of history, because it's a lot faster. I mean, Solana is a lot faster than Ethereum. Last I checked, I don't know how much faster. I just know it's faster.
Yeah, it just crashes all the time.
Yeah.
because it hangs itself up. So it's like eh. So you're not solving, you know, it's like the speed is speed has two components, right? How many transactions, how much data you put into a block, and you know, it's like how quickly your system reaches consensus. And there's just it's you know, it's like if you know, great, so you can do 10,000 transactions in a second. Do you know how much data that is? Like just do the math, right? Yeah. So you're and you need to keep that around. So that's why, you know, Vitalik suggested you should have ZK EVMs verifying the blocks, and then only adding the proofs, the ZK snark proof of correct execution to the block. It's just the block header and the hashes and the proof. So you're reducing the data you need to schlep around in the chain significantly. So and then you can, you know, it's like, and then you can, and because of that, now you can put more transactions into a block, obviously, right? And therefore you increase your throughput. as I like to tell my students at Duke, everything is a trade-off.
Yeah.
So you need to make your choices.
Well, good, fast, or cheap. Pick two.
You can be, I mean, you can be good, fast, and cheap. It's just what's your level of trust, right?
I don't think you can be all three. I think if you're going to be good and fast, you're not going to be cheap. If you're cheap and fast, you're not going to be good. That's just my impression and stuff over there. My big thing is everybody. It just seems as though right now, with a lot of the public architectures, are really trying to attack that lag time between block commit and block finality. Because Ethereum's still at around 8 to 9 minutes. Bitcoin's 10 minutes, but that's just Bitcoin. I think that
now finality on an epoch on Ethereum is like somewhere between 12 and 13 minutes, but that's for an epoch, right? That's not for a single block.
Well, yeah,
right? But it's 50 slots.
Well, yeah, but you're trying to get scalability, and where I think a lot of the a lot of the work is kind of has a focus on is a lot of these kind of emerging metaverse applications, because the choice of layer one is going to be especially important, because if you have a large amount of users within this environment and however they're interacting and just moving within it,
singleton doesn't scale.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like and an L1 is a singleton.
Right.
So that doesn't scale. So you do things different. You can do things differently. You do trade-offs, and then you're again, there are different ways how you can achieve throughput and scalability, and it's a combination of things, not just one thing. And that's the same thing with like if you think about baseline, right? Baseline, if you have multiple baseline implementations, you need to be able to interoperate, right? It's because I can have a baseline implementation that's using Ethereum, or one that uses Solana, and now I need to do interop, because there are legitimate business reasons why I need to do things. That's why we're doing the interoperability demonstration, right? And what we're doing there. Keith, do you want to tell a little bit about the working group there, where we're at?
Sure, in a second. Actually, I wanted to bring up, since we're talking about finality, single slot finality. Yeah. Do you guys, what do you guys know about that? Do you guys know anything worth sharing on that before we move into interop?
Single slot finality?
Yeah, they're calling it SSF.
So not epoch finality, it's single slot finality.
Yeah, and I've seen it in a couple places now. I think it's up on just Ethereum org talking about SSF, and also in multiple ZK groups like Lambda Works and whatnot. Research being done into SSF, which is like having the block produced and finalized all in one go. But supposedly it's early on in research, so I thought I'd just throw it out there as in case anybody hasn't heard of it, something to look into. Supposedly, according to Ethereum, it'll probably come after upgrades of Burkle trees and dank sharding and so on and so forth. But yeah. So we can. What's up?
Well, so the problem with single slot, so single slot finality is just a recasting of eventual versus strong consistency, right? If the block is final as soon as it's produced, then it's strongly consistent, right? Then the block producer is the arbiter of that block is either going to be not finalized, right? And then the whole thing halts, or it's finalized. So, but for finalization, you need to have verification of that the proof is actually correct, right? So it's like there is no, again, you can't have your cake and eat it. There's it's like there are trade-offs. Yes, you can do a lot with zero knowledge proofs. So the slots are being finalized. And you can, but there is no, it's like you can't cheat the CAP theorem, right? Consistency, availability, and partition tolerance. It's like boom. It's you just can't, like, whether it's zero knowledge or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I just thought it was worth mentioning because it's kind of shown up on a lot of my feeds and threads as kind of a new emerging topic that people are really looking into now. So if anybody wants to get involved in that, I suggest now's the time, get in early. But yeah, let's not spend time. Let's go into interop. What do we want to talk about? What about
just say, yeah, just say where the interop working group is at right now. What's the current state of, like, the use case we want to do, why we want to do the use case, how we want to implement it,
I don't know all that. Yeah, I mean, you just jump in. As I don't know all the details. We have a interop meeting that we do every Friday. What is it? 9? 10? Where
9 Central,
9 CST,
7 Pacific, 10 Eastern.
Right, don't show up if you're in PST. No. Yeah, and yeah, anybody's welcome. Usually has somewhere maybe like 5 to 7 people. We had a previous guest on the show versus Zero show up to the last interop meeting. We've gotten to the point, I think we're about 6 or 7 sessions in, maybe 5 to 6 sessions in, where we've kind of established a general use case for interop between BRI3 and BRI1 from PRVD Oasis. That's validation of master banking data, and Andreas will now explain in detail something about Acme Corporation.
No, it's like it's a very common use case, right? So it's like when you give someone, when you're a customer of a company, right, that writes you invoices, right? Then they're partners, one company, another company, and you need to pay them. You need to validate the banking information, right? The banking information has to be validated. But how can you validate banking?
Done by a third-party bank, right? Like another bank behind the bank, or what? How's that usually done? What's the
what you're saying? What you're doing is that the customer who has to come with a bank letter, right, with a wet signature that says this banking data is correct, right? The bank will never go and if you Acme Corporation want to validate the banking data of your customer, you need to you can't just go to the bank and say, hey, is this banking data correct? The bank will say, I can't tell you. You're not the account owner. What are you talking about? Right? So, tell the other guy to come to us and we're going to validate that banking data is correct. Right? So it's a lot more onus on, so the customer needs to go to the bank, get a bank letter, like a real letter, right, that says, yep, this is okay, right? And between banks, that's slightly different because they're because they're compliant entities. That's okay. But between a non-bank entity and a bank entity to validate banking data, it's just not going to happen.
Could you do it with a range proof, saying, hey, okay, this person, if I'm financing a home, I want to make sure they have at least the 20% balance in their checking account. Can you attest that or prove that for me? Instead,
Well, what you need to do is in order to do that, you need to show them your bank statement, right? A recent bank statement, right? That you have that balance. That's how you get it. The bank will not give out your information. They're not allowed to.
right, but could they validate a range proof saying, yeah, they have at least 50K? That's all we say.
No,
They can't do that. Okay.
no. It's like they can't. No, it's like this is you as the customer need to produce the proof. So you need to go to your bank, and either because you have a bank statement or because you have a bank letter that says, yes, this banking information is correct.
Okay,
right?
so in the current system, you as the customers, you're just going back and forth between.
It's going back and forth,
Acme
right? So it goes,
Corporation
Yeah.
giving
right.
proof, like trading.
Yeah,
proof between
exactly.
them. Okay.
any type of real estate finance is going to be like this. Any type of collateralized finance, to where you've got to, get current, up to date data on it, so that for the underwriting model.
Right. So the interrupt here is what we're doing. We're synchronizing the banking data of Acme that the customer gave to Acme Corporation with the actual banking data on the customer in the customer's bank without exchanging banking information. That's the clever
Wow.
that's
pretty cool.
clever thing. Well, right. So we're basically cutting out a work step between so we're making it easier for the customer and easier for the bank, right? So less hassle for the customer, less work for the bank, because they don't need to issue that letter, right? Because
And
that's
also
an
kind of
internal,
more immediate for Acme Corporation to do
and
business with the
immediate for
customer.
Acme Corporation, because they can update their system and know, yep, there is not like a decimal off, or there's like, it's right, because you can check. It's like, are you sure that you wrote this? This doesn't verify. And you can do this like virtually in real time, because what we're doing is we're just sending zero knowledge proofs back and forth, because we're basically putting the banking data into a cryptographic data structure that can be verified with zero knowledge proofs. And that's the cool thing. Then we're sending those back and forth, right? That's
Nice.
and we're doing it with two different BRIs, right? So it's we have a state, right, for Acme Corporation, a work group with a customer and Acme Corporation, and the work group from the bank, from the BRI that the bank uses, right? Because the bank has a lot of customers coming in with the same thing, so they have a BRI with different work groups where, the bank verifies and their auditor verifies that what the bank verified is correct, right? So that's our use case, and we can do all of this in zero knowledge. So we're not exchanging any information. We're not exchanging any PII. We're not even exchanging encrypted information.
But all parties can rely on the same proof.
The parties can rely on the same proof because they can use their data. They can use their data to verify the proof, right? So they're getting the proof, but there's one element missing. And that element that's missing in the proof, right, the other party needs to generate. And if they generate that little piece of data correctly, then the proof verifies. If it doesn't, then the proof doesn't verify. And therefore, that either, yep, the data is correct on the other side, right? If the proof verifies them, it's not, if the proof doesn't verify. So it's a little trick that allows us to do that.
So the actual one thing is basically a receipt acknowledgement saying, I agree with this, right?
Yes.
Matches. So
yes,
that little thing.
Yeah, it just says it's like whatever you have that I don't know is correct. I don't know what you have, but what you have is correct.
And you don't know what I have, but we can prove that what we have is common.
Yeah, we have, you know, two pieces of data that are the same, right, without having to exchange them.
Right.
And show them, reveal them in any way, shape, or form.
Or move them out of any system of architecture.
Or remove them out of any system. Exactly.
Yeah. That's the one thing the CISOs really glom onto when you're discussing baseline and stuff is, wait a minute, yeah, I would much rather secure data at rest than data in motion.
Correct. So this is really sort of like, it's a real, you know, it's a pattern, right, that you can utilize for anything. If you agree on this is the data structure, right, and with the data with the same, you know, with these fields, and they mean these things, and you have that, you agree on a schema, then you can validate anything.
Yeah,
right?
and you're not having to
Left
force
hand side,
data,
right side.
and you're not forcing data into a shared architecture.
That is correct.
And the big thing is then we're starting to see a lot of the failures of governance. You know, we, of course, the high profile ones, because they didn't think of the governance aspect of it, or at least the intangibles and stuff. You know, trade lens is one that a lot of people look at. And, you know, I saw it as a failure of governance, not so much of the technology, because the participants is, so long as you had the largest global shipper as one of the plank holders of the project, the perception is going to be, I'm going to feel reluctant to join it, but I'm sure not going to be putting any customer data onto this shared architecture when
Correct.
they are one of the plank holders. And you can assure me up until you're blue in the face that that will never happen, but I'm never going to believe you. Because what happens when it does, I don't have a throat to choke. I don't have somebody to come back, because again, who owns or controls the architecture? Who, you know, has the final say in dispute resolution, and who can compel the release or whatever? I mean,
Right.
none of that is, you know, is nailed down at the beginning.
So what it's trustless data synchronization without having to rely on a blockchain.
Right. And a lot of people are still not, you know, quite saying, you know, I don't know if I can rely on a blockchain just yet. And I'm like, well, again, we've got to have that paradigm shift. We've got to be able to sit there and kind of challenge behavior. You know, we definitely see it can be tricky when you're trying to explain the whole concept of zero knowledge, even to begin with, because most people as humans, they're going to say, until I'm only going to accept that you've proven to something to me by showing it to me. And, you know, and they're like, well, I can't show it to you, or I won't show it to you. I can't because of data privacy, or I won't because I'll get fired. It's sensitive company trade secrets, whatever. I'm not sharing it to you. But what I can do is prove that what I'm looking at is the same thing you're looking at. Does that cross your threshold? You know,
unless I'm using Chat GPT, then I'm just putting company data out in the open.
GPT is an interesting thing, mainly because it's like, okay,
anyway,
you're only as good, but Chat GPT is scrubbing data from the internet or from large data sets and stuff. And it's like, okay, have you made sure, can Chat GPT tell the difference between confidential and regular data? No. And what happens is, wherever you source that data, did you own it? Is it public domain? Can you actually use it? And if you then go and say make a bunch of money with it, these people saying, hey, you used my data to make your money, I want my cut. Yeah, again, or hey, you source this this data on me unethically or illegally. I don't want you using that in the outcome or the insights. You know, you start to get a lot of the I guess the kind of ripple effects when it comes to the whole Chat GPT. I mean, wish I had it in high school. It would have written some term papers, but right now
no, it's not really worth it.
But the privacy stuff, like Italy has banned it, you know, on a governmental level.
That's very true.
You know, so it's like, okay, you need to, and I'm glad people are thinking, hey, we need to start looking at the integrity of that data that we're going to be trying to feed into, you know, Chat GPT or any AI ML engine.
Right. Well, actually, Jack, you're working on a ZK state channel project, aren't you? We're basically doing the same thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so mostly the idea is to just remove the CCSM, the blockchain, wherever possible, and just use the proofs that you're exchanging as like those state objects. And I think like a lot of it's very, very compatible with like what Baseline's trying to do, but like you've got like a purchase order object, or you've got some sort of object that represents some sort of state transfer. And there's a bunch of confidential information inside of it that you don't want to reveal, as well as you also want to scale that up and have many different potentially interactions generate that state object. So essentially it's just kind of a way to create like a summary of like parts of the in the case of the supply chain, parts of the different interactions, which can then be kind of used as generic types for again, like a proof of a valid invoice or something like that, while having a lot of privacy and scalability.
So is that so how is that? So there was sort of like a general state channel, like counterfactual a couple years ago, right? So what's the difference between what you were doing and like counterfactual, which was doing basically like state object exchange?
So there's a couple. The biggest one I would say is that those are optimistic in that when you put state on chain and finalize it, there's a period where you have to wait, a challenge period where you have to let your counterparties essentially contest what you posted. And this is because there's no way the generalized state channel, traditional state channels, they use just multi-signature agreements on state increments without actually performing any sort of validation of that state. So what we can do with zero knowledge is, instead of having to rely on everyone saying that this is a certain state outcome, we can predefine certain end conditions that once they're reached, it's provable that it did happen, and it's non-refutable that it didn't. Like it's going to go on chain no matter what. It's going to verify no matter what. So the biggest one is the finality, most likely. But again, just actually being able to verify that state. And there's also, so it's technically like you are hiding state off chain by the nature of just like not verifying it, but it's a very weird type of privacy, and it's not like true privacy, I would say, because you've still got the counterparties seeing everything. So verifiable computations and then actual confidentiality in that state.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, that it's an execution framework that sort of like fits in nicely within like the baseline protocol.
It's very much made to basically, it's tailored to kind of fit on top of what's going on here. So that's cool. So you are those like they're like custom circuits, or they're more like sort of like more like a proving that a virtual machine ran properly, like a ZK VM? So we were actually even looking at like risk zero a little bit when kind of thinking about this. Right now, everything is application specific. And this was also something that was a problem with state channels themselves. Generalized state channels did kind of come out towards the end, but there's definitely some wonkiness with them. Yeah, right now it's very much circuit per whatever you're doing, and you know, you get the scalability of like you've got an ASIC, it's going to be perfectly efficient, assuming it is optimized. But we've we've wondered if it's worth trying to actually figure out how to generalize it, or if we should just like run it through AI once it gets a little better and just call it a day. And once it has enough training circuits, maybe people can just come along and plug in and generate ASICs without having to think, which is very mindless and very, very dirty. But with all the effort that goes into building something like a Halo 2 circuit, could be useful.
So what about like is there but so basically you're writing the circuit in a domain specific language, right? Like Cairo or Noir or something like that, right?
Yeah. As a
Like or Circon, right? Are you using Starks or is everything Snark based?
So what we have right now is all snarks, but like the way Hermes works, I think, is that they have a bunch of snarks for their opcodes, and then they have a Stark that aggregates all of that. And we have been messing around with PCD recursion, but we got some interesting feedback at ZK Hack that's kind of bringing us back to accumulation, which would fit really well into like instead of verifying back and forth every single proof and building one proof, we exchange a lot of different proofs and then do one final proof and sum it up. So in that case, I think there's a strong chance that we do something like all of those are snarks and then the aggregation is Stark. But right now,
you mean the other way around? All the ones are Starks and the final one is a Snark. If you want to, if you want to put it on chain, right? You want the Snark because
you have to route.
Right,
and
because
then no
because the
setup for the
verification.
Starks, and then you just with the things.
And you use like the you use Plonk, right? Plonk circuit, Plonk based Snark, and you use the ignition trusted setup, so it's a public one, and then that's you don't have to run your own trusted setup, which is like a pain, right?
Yeah, it'll be nice to extend off of the KZG ceremony for sure, but even that's still trusted tactically. So
yeah. It's the thing. I actually think that if we can get like Stark friendly precompiles, then we should be able to get to be able to use and we do like Stark proof via accumulators, and I think or recursion, then I think it's worth it should be fine. You don't have to rely on Snarks anymore.
Well, that'll be a quantum proof future. So
that on top of that, right? So that's an interesting thing. But now we're like really in the weeds here.
Yeah.
But thank you, Jack, for sharing. I think we're at time, Sonal, right? Or is my time check wrong here?
You are right. That happened quickly, but thanks for the engaging conversations. Since we had a last minute office hours, that was super interesting regardless. And next week we will have our General Assembly where we'll invite others in the community to give updates on what's happening related to Baseline as well as outside on other projects. And then the following week we will host ZK Pass, who is doing work in the identity/ZK space. I will send some resources for reviewing beforehand.
Cool.
But thanks so much to our studio here for the conversation, and have a good rest of your week, everybody. Tune in next time. Thank you.
Thank you.